Don't lose it. Hey, and we're live tonight. Welcome to another episode of We Are Seek and Strike podcast. With me, as always, Josh Kaskanen. Josh, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, Chris. Happy to be here.
Me too, man. Me too. We've got kind of a different show for everyone tonight. We want to talk about what's obviously going on in our country, which is systemic racism. We've got our guests, David Carl and RJ Montano from CurseCast joining us, as well as Alicia, who will pop in just a little bit. So we'll go ahead and bring on David Carl and RJ into the conversation now. David, how you doing? RJ, how you doing?
Hey guys, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's been a weird long day, but we're excited to be here.
Right on. Yeah, we're glad to have you guys. I was just telling Josh, I said, obviously, we have you guys here tonight. We wanted to do something a little different. We really wanted to focus on, what's going on in America right now with systemic racism and, the protest, and really just use tonight as a time to engage with each other, to be able to educate and to kind of go from that point. And welcome Alicia into the show. How you doing tonight?
I'm good, thank you. Sorry, kind of being late. My laptop was giving me a hard time. Had to restart it.
Hey, it's okay. Mine does that too. I in fact was on a pod yesterday with David, a little conversation, and they pretty much ended the conversation by the time I downloaded the Zoom again. So we're gonna kick off our show here tonight. Just simple introductions. Obviously, David, Carl, and RJ do CurseCast, and this week they decided, rather than having a show, that they wanted to come in and kind of help amplify the Black voice, or my voice, and ultimately, really just kind of contribute to this conversation. And of course, we got Alicia, who also does, on an occasion, the West Coast Women podcast with Marissa and Danielle of San Antonio and Fairweather Pod. And then, of course, Josh Kaskanen here, the greatest up there at the top. So before we get kicked off, something I wanted to do, I had thought about doing it. I thought it would be nice for us to do is I would like for us to kind of have a moment of silence for those folks that have lost their lives due to police brutality. I have their names streaming across the bottom of this. So I thought we would take a moment of silence to kind of reflect on this. And then from there, we would kind of join together in saying their names. So we'll take that moment now. And if you guys are ready, we'll just start off with their names as it comes back through the scroller the next time around. So Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Deion Johnson, Tony McDade. Yeah, and I had learned about Deion Johnson only but like a day ago. I didn't realize about him. He was asleep in his car in Arizona and, was found by the police. And, from what little information is out there now, it sounds like there wasn't really any sort of resistance from Deion, that he was just shot dead, murdered in his car, just like on the freeway. So that is just really rough. It was the same day as George Floyd, and obviously none of us really knew that. To the effect that I got a message in my email from Uber today, and they wanted to obviously match donations for the 3 people that were known: George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. But I replied back like, hey, you guys left off Deion Johnson and Tony McDade. Tony McDade is the black trans woman, or sorry, black trans man that was coming home, and he was marked as a suspect for a stabbing incident, and the police didn't try to de-escalate or anything. They just shot him because he said that he made a move that was consistent with reaching for a gun. And a local witness had mentioned that they didn't say, hey, stop, it's the police, or hey, put your hands up or anything like that. They just shot to kill, and that is truly sad. And that's 5 people this year, 5 too many, definitely one too many, and that really breaks my heart, and I kind of want to see what your thoughts about it, especially about learning about ones that are just recent. I mean, Tony McDade is 2 days after George Floyd and Deion Johnson.
Yeah. You brought up Deion Johnson, and I hadn't heard about that. I didn't know about that. And that kind of goes to show you just how systemic this is and how constant this is.
It's tough because every time you hear about one, you don't become desensitized, but you just hear about the next one. And then when there's a video attached to it, that's when the outrage comes. So unfortunately, there is no video on these other ones. So you're not seeing the same amount of outrage, and we should be outraged no matter what. Not if there's video, not if there's audio. We should be pissed off. And we are just learning about stuff. And I think that's what's tearing everyone apart is it just keeps happening. It just keeps happening, and it just keeps happening, and there's nothing stopping it. There's no one being held accountable. And the only time there is someone being held accountable, it's many days later because there was a video. If there was a video for George Floyd, I don't think any of this would be in the news right now. But there was the video, and here we are. And it just sucks. It just sucks. I don't know how else or how better to say it.
Yeah, I agree, RJ. And you mentioned the video, and the list just gets longer and longer. And if there was no video for George Floyd, if none of this would be happening, it was only a matter of time before something else would set this off, and that's how systemic it is. And that's how, inevitable. So I hope change can come from this, Heartbreaking is the right word.
And that's why it's so crucial to, I posted this on Facebook the other day and got some blowback, but that's okay. Why it's so crucial to record interactions with the police. That's for everybody's benefit. It's for your benefit as somebody interacting with the police. Because we've seen so many instances of police brutality, of police attacks on people of color, on all of these things. And then on the other end, if the police are doing their job, if they're doing things right, it's a record for them too. It's evidence for them to say, if there's some bad person who is attacking a police officer, and you can record that on camera, you can help save a life, or you can help protect somebody. It's for everybody's protection. It's a record that can provide for everybody. That's why body-worn cameras are so important for police, and why I would encourage anybody who has an interaction with the police to record and just say, if they're approaching you, just say, officer, just to let you know, I'm recording this interaction. And I would imagine that most cops would probably say, great, I am too. I think that's good for everybody, but it's for everybody's protection, because this just happens. There's no such thing as it happening once is too much, but it's happening way more than once. It's been happening for a long time. This isn't something new.
Exactly. And if you really think about some of these things, I mean, think about the pandemic and us being kind of somewhat sequestered to our places. You feel like, if we weren't, at some of these stay at homes, if this wasn't happening, then there would be someone out. There would have been one more voice, right? One more person to say, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. Or, yo, what's going on? And just that to me is kind of scary. Do you know what I mean? Because there are several times when I'm like, man, I just want to go out late to go get some last call at 11 o'clock at night, or go driving down to Baskin Robbins, or I just want to leave the house because I've been in all day. And I'll tell you guys, sometimes I am a little bit worried, looking over my shoulder just a little bit, that something could happen and no one would know because I live alone. My family's in another state, you know what I mean? And it isn't like I have daily check-ins with anyone. Do you know what I mean? So it's I always contemplate that no one could know, because there isn't anything I regularly do with people. You know what I'm saying?
And I think that's something that I understand what you're saying, Chris. I absolutely understand what you're saying, but that's something that at least Josh and I could speak for myself, but I imagine Josh, feel free to disagree with me. We can never really understand that. We can do our best to hear you. We can do our best to understand you. But until you are a person of color, I don't think any of us really know. We can really understand the struggle of being able to do what should be everyday things, which should be no big deal. You should be able to go to last call and get a burrito at 11 o'clock, and nobody should care. It shouldn't be a problem. It should be just like Josh or I going to get one, but it's not, because you're targeted, and it's horrifying. And again, it would be one thing if this was one person. It would be a terrible tragedy, but it's not. It's systemic, and it's been going on for centuries, frankly, in different ways. Yeah. And I'm going to stop talking because you've heard enough from the white guy. But
I'm not going to disagree with you at all, David. That's 100% agreed. How many times in college did I go and get a burrito or go to last call at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, walking 1 mile, 2 miles back to my apartment, skateboarding in the middle of the street? It was nothing. It's not even a thought. And I can hear you, but I can't ever know it. I agree completely.
And it's terrifying because you brought up now that even right now, more than ever, there's less people out because of the quarantine, and just because people are afraid to go out. So that's less people to hold the police accountable. That's less people for that are out that can record the interaction or something like that. If you go out and you're pulled over, what can you do? I mean, there's nothing you can do except for hope that you're not going to get pulled out of your car for being too, I don't know, fidgety. Maybe you're nervous because there's a cop. You're bound to get fidgety. Police are. I seen this sign the other day, and it makes so much sense. They keep saying that. Well, I got the adrenaline, and I was fidgety, and I was nervous because he looked like he was pulling out something. But you, as a black man, are supposed to be absolutely calm with a gun in your face. How the hell does that make sense? So you're right. It's and I'm Mexican, so I'm not going to even claim to know how bad it is. I mean, there's been some racial profiling for me, but not nearly near what you had to experience or anyone that's black. So that's why we're stressing the Black Lives Matter. I don't know. I hope we're going to get to that. Yeah. I'm seeing so much crap about that, and no, it's Black Lives Matter. It's stupid for you to be arguing that.
Yeah, it's crazy, and we will definitely get into that. Just how folks are, because it's to me, from my vantage point as a black man, it's almost like someone's going, "Oh, I don't see my race in there, so this can't be right." Like, recall this. Let's get another. Let's see this again, and it's like, this isn't a time to go, okay, look, only Black Lives Matter. I get so tired of that as well, because it's like they want to see that same ticker that I just had showing off every single nationality so they could feel accounted for. And it's like, we're not doing a census right now. You know what I mean? We're not doing a census. It's not a roll call for races right now. This is we're focusing on, where the racism is egregious, and again, like RJ, you being a Mexican man, Alicia, you being a Mexican woman, it's like, when they're talking about ICE, when that thing was coming up earlier on, like, through much of the years, I felt super horrible for my Mexican friends, because I'm thinking every time you're out, someone is like somehow thinking it, like somehow they're thinking the ICE thing, or as if like, oh, well, that person's not, maybe they're not documented, like, and you have people thinking these sort of thoughts, that it's like, dude, shame on you for even having these assumptions, these subtle little things that you're thinking, these microaggressions, that are going towards people, and those things are happening left and right, and we will get into that more, because it's like, these are things that folks need to know are traits of racism. They might seem small, subtle, little like jokes, things that you do to your buddy, you nudge them and say something, but it's like, these really are the seeds, that bear the fruit. So this, I figured, like, right now, like, this is our time to kind of engage with each other, to express ourselves, and and educate one another, and also be able to empathize. And that's really what, even beyond this podcast, is what we're hoping that folks will do, on the other sides of these screens, that they will check in with their friends, engage them, find out how they're doing, that their friends will be able to express themselves, and know that environment is safe. Sometimes I don't feel like I can express myself around some of my friends, because I feel like they're going to think that I'm crazy, or that I am in the experience by myself, or or that it's going to be so offensive to them to have to hear something so sensitive that may make them feel awkward, but really it's like I'm living it by myself. Do you know what I mean? And so, this is the time for us to express ourselves, and, again, to educate, like, hey, this right here, this is something that I hear a lot, or, when this is used, this is kind of what I take from that, and again, empathy, like ride along with your friends, like, like being there actively, and so that's what, where we're at in this, I wanted to ask you guys off the bat, what were you ever taught about like race and culture growing up?
So I grew up here in New Mexico, and you learn about New Mexico culture. You learn about New Mexico history. You learn about stuff that happens here. You learn a little bit about the history of the U.S. And it's not necessary. It's more what can you learn and regurgitate for a test than it is what can we teach you about U.S. history. So we learn more about New Mexico history than we do about U.S. history. What they teach you about U.S. history is none of the bad stuff. They're like, hey, look at all these great things we've done. Look at these technological advancements that we've created. Look at, like, here's all the yay pretty stuff that we've done. They don't teach you about what really happens. And that's a downfall, but that's several years ago. It's been a long time, but I don't know if it's changed, and if it hasn't, that's just that's a shame.
I can speak to that a little bit as a history teacher in New Mexico. I definitely don't think we're perfectly there yet. We have to hit the state standards. We have to, touch on New Mexico history, touch on the Industrial Revolution and all the inventions that came up, like you said. But like, that's one of the things I'm going to try to challenge myself to do going forward, is like, make sure that I'm hitting, if I'm teaching about the invention of the light bulb or whatever, I also want to make sure that we know that Andrew Jackson was the reason for the Trail of Tears. Like, I want to make sure that there's not just the pretty side, and I think I've been able to do that fairly well in New Mexico because my students have been, Native or Hispanic. And where I grew up in rural northern Michigan, I think a lot of people are very well-intentioned, good people. I think we're probably going to get to this later, but non-racist for the most part. But there's not a lot of diversity, where I'm from. So for me, moving here has just been a huge benefit to the way I see the world. So, and of course, I'm not fully there yet, but I'm trying every day.
I had I think a pretty kind of great privilege growing up in Miami, which is
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, I just graduated high school.
Go ahead, Alicia.
I think she might be a little behind.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, and Josh, going off what you said, look, I get that. I graduated high school 2 years ago. Luckily, I was lucky enough to go to a charter school. And with my teachers, they would show so much of the good side of American history, which I really enjoyed because it gave me both perspectives, and it made me understand everything a little bit more what is going on around the world, because you don't really get taught that as a kid. And obviously, what my parents would try to teach me, it they didn't want to put fear in me, or they just wanted everything to be good for me. But that it's just not the case, and everyone just needs to know both the good and the bad.
For sure.
Yeah. I was saying I think I had the privilege to grow up in Miami, which is good and bad. It's a really multicultural city. There's a huge Black culture. There's a huge Cuban culture, Puerto Rican culture, Jewish culture. It's very multicultural, and I felt really blessed to grow up in a city like that. And I got to experience a lot of that. Not necessarily talking about kind of what I learned in the classroom. It's more just kind of what I learned in life. We for a while a few years we lived in Little Havana, which has more Cubans than Cuba. We lived in Liberty City, which is a largely Black community, for a few years. We lived in Hallandale, which is a largely Jewish community. We moved around Miami and Fort Lauderdale quite a bit, and it was enlightening, I think, for me as a kid. And like I said, I feel really fortunate to have grown up around lots of different cultures. Moving to New Mexico for me a few years back was a whole new experience. I had admittedly limited experience with both Mexican culture and none with New Mexican culture. So it's a really great opportunity for me to learn more. And I think Josh and Alicia both hit on a really good point in what they were saying. And that's, it doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter if you're in school or not anymore. We're continuously learning about each other's cultures. To kind of bring it all back home to the conversation we're having, it's that, you may have done racist things in your life. You probably have. We all probably have. Every single one of us have done racist things in our life. It doesn't mean that you are a racist person. It means that you have done bad things or hurtful things. And RJ and I were having a conversation today. And RJ, I'm sorry to pull this out on you, but I think he had said a really great statement that stuck with me. We can all recognize that we've done bad things in our life, and we don't have to like them, and we don't have to be proud of them. But the important thing, and what RJ said, is do the next good thing. And I love that. I've never heard it said like that. I've never heard it said in that way, and it immediately stuck with me. It's just like, shit, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have thought that. Whatever it is, let me do the next good thing. Let me find a way to help. Let me find a way to be part of positive change and positive movement. I'm not proud of what I've done in the past. I'm not proud of the person I was in the past. I'm not proud of whatever it is. It's okay. Do the next good thing to move towards positive change. I love that. Love it.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because I mean,
Right. That all goes to RJ.
Yeah, I mean that's right there. It's like your friend, you know what I mean? It's like your ride along, and I like that, because you're right, we do mess up, and we all definitely all have, said or done something, that was racist. I'm sure of it, and it's living in a life or in a world where things are passive, and where people are used to, like, oh, don't worry about it, and kind of shoving it under the rug, and sometimes, because I mean, I don't blame anyone else for the things I say, right? I said it, that I shouldn't have said it. It doesn't help us when we're enabled, or because I know, like, living in this world, it's like, no one wants to rock the boat. No one wants to, say, hey, that was racist, and because when that word comes out, it is, it's like death, it's like a sharp knife, and we're all definitely trying to heed that, but it's like, that's why a conversation like this is so important, because, it allows each of us to, like, internalize and think about things. Like, no one really should just be, like, willy-nilly on the keyboards, or just, just spouting off. Like, we have to think about what we're saying, even like recently with, when we're typing, on Facebook, and, we're sharing, true concern about issues, and everyone's coming in from a different angle, and some people are offended right away, and others are like, hey, look, this is just what's going on. And it's like, even in those moments, it's like we still have to be concise. We're not trying to necessarily attack any people. We're just trying to share the truth, or address the things that are not true, and really kind of isolate it, and I feel like we do a good job of that, and I feel like there are times when, rather than folks sticking around to get to the end of the conversation, like, the comment thread is deleted, and so it's like, wow, well, like, that doesn't help that situation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's important. We're having these conversations on social media a lot of the time, because, well, we're all socially distanced and we're stuck in our homes, and I think I know I'm guilty of this, where I get frustrated, and I speak out, I say something on social media, and like you mentioned, some people can be offended, or take it personally. I am guilty of, and something I need to work on, is making them aware that it's not about them individually. It's about a corrupt system. It's about a system that desperately needs change. And so, when I, again, put on Facebook that you should record your interactions with police, it's not intended to attack individual police officers. It's intended to make people aware that of their rights, and that they should do what they can to keep themselves safe, because the system is failing. The system is failing Black people. The system is failing Mexicans. The system is failing people of color, and you need to protect yourself. Again, it's not intended to say, you person that I know who is a police officer, you are a bad person. That's not how I intended. And again, it's something I need to work on to make it clear, hey, I'm not trying to attack you as a person. I'm trying to point out issues in the system that we as a society need to fix.
I think one of the really positive things we're seeing from these conversations that are happening nationwide right now is, and I'm going to take it back a couple steps to what David and RJ were talking about do the next good thing. Mm-hmm. We're seeing people in real time, like with Drew Brees yesterday, making a statement that they truly believed. And realizing how wrong they were, and being able to fix it and do the next good thing. I saw Kendall Coyne Schofield. She's a women's hockey player for Team USA. She did a Blackout Tuesday post, and someone immediately, hey, was this you, trash talking Colin Kaepernick 5 years ago? And she was able to say, I was wrong in that moment, but I'm not going to delete that post. I should have realized what he was talking about back then. I realize it now. Here's what I'm going to do better.
And we all continue to grow. I love that.
Yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That was really cool to see,
Yeah, that right there is definitely cool to see because, I do remember those moments. I remember, this was the first peaceable protest. This was, they're going to kneel and more folks were just focused on like how they thought it tied to the flag and what they thought it represented versus what was happening, and the alternate, there wasn't an alternate at the time. It was like, we're going to either do this. And then it was then like kind of like prescribed to them, like, okay, well, we're okay if you lock arms, or, hey, we're okay if you do it in the locker room, or don't show everyone, or, and it's like, when you really think about that, it's like you have someone who's basically saying like, hey, I don't care if you protest it as long as I don't have to see it.
As long as I'm not inconvenienced.
Right. As long as my regular program still continues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when teams effectively weren't coming out together or things of that nature, I mean, just look at now. Like right now, we haven't had sports, right? And if we have had sports, could you imagine that some of the protests that has been occurring would be right back in the sports domain?
Yeah. Well, you've had people say for the longest time, the reaction right now with regard to, riots and looting and things like that is,
right.
Why don't you just protest peacefully? Why don't you just protest peacefully? Well, I'm going to be honest. Black people have been protesting peacefully for a long time, in a lot of different ways. And every step of the way, people told them it was wrong. Whether it was Kaepernick kneeling, whether it was Kobe and LeBron both wearing "I Can't Breathe" shirts, whether it was some of the speeches at the Oscars, it's things like that. And I mean, it's not as if there haven't been efforts, and everything is. It seems like every step of the way is, that's not the right way. That's not the right way. So, I mean, it's frustrating. It's frustrating.
Yeah, you see it, and you could protest, but not like that. Not like that. But not like that. When? How is it going to ever be right? If you don't want to see it, it's never going to be right.
Well, and to go back further about peaceful protests, my parents told me about where Black folks didn't ride the bus. Like they didn't ride the bus one day, and that was a lot of Black folk riding the bus, So there was the times when they didn't ride the bus, or days where they didn't spend money. There have been a couple of, don't spend any money days. There's one coming up on July 7th, like where, no one, in protest, like, no one should spend any money on July 7th, so they can see all of those dollars, that are going into these other organizations who aren't necessarily supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, or furthermore, are like fueling racist, like organizations, if you will, or movements or leads. And so there have been so many different ways, I think, that we have tried to peaceably protest, I mean, the Olympics, I mean, there was the point when the Black athletes all threw up a fist, you know what I mean? That's so iconic, and so now, like you're saying, Dave, like with rioters and looters, which, for the most part seem like agent provocateurs, right? Like now it's like they're trying to thread the needle together and say, oh, well, for instance, I can't have NYPD pizza because of the protests, the restaurant's boarded up, you know what I mean? And it's like,
How inconvenient for you when people have been oppressed for centuries.
Right. It's like, no. It's like you need to separate it. It's like, or, what's the other thing? Oh, man, I'm totally okay if you want to kneel now. Now,
right, and
now that I've seen the worst.
And that's the thing. Like I've seen on social media from across the country. It's just like, look at this. This is an inspiring story of protesters and police officers kneeling together. And on its surface, if it was just that, I think that would be fine. But there have been so many opportunities to kneel before this, and it feels like kneeling because it's convenient now.
Right. Well, and again, it's the thing that gets me is this is okay if you do that. If you do that, it's like RJ is saying, you know what I mean? And it's like, is it just me in it? Or, like, why don't you come and join me? Oh, well, no, I can't do that. Like, you're going to have to kind of be alone in that moment. And I think that's the other part of it, is that there's like no sort of solidarity, when you see someone who is suffering, you know what I mean? Like, we see it all the time on Facebook. I mean, someone loses a relative and we offer our condolences. We pray, you know what I mean? Like we're coming alongside that person. And I don't ever question if people are being genuine when they say these things. I'm assuming that they are, you know what I'm saying? But I hope that even more comes from that too, that the next time I see that person, that, it's like I said, I don't take it for granted or hope that it happens or that it's mandatory. But, if I really am there for Josh because, he lost his grandma, man, the next time I see him, dude, I'm gonna give him a big hug. You know what I mean? I'm going to check in with him. And it's just not like that 5 seconds for the post. And it's like, all right, cool. Back to other things. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's where we really got to, where it has to be a change, where it's got to be genuine. And so these folks that are suggesting other methods that are convenient, okay, well, let me take the other half of that. Like, why don't you join me in that thing that's convenient, and let's have a conversation. Let's do something together with that. Let's build with that. You know what I mean?
Couldn't agree more. And like I said, it's just, it's a situation where, you're hearing a lot of people saying, well, we should all be coming together. We should all be fighting for unity. We should all be fighting for reconciliation. Reconciliation implies that there was conciliation in the first place, implies that there was equity in the first place and equality in the first place, and there wasn't. There never has been for Black people in this country. So, the end goal, I think, for everybody is everybody getting along and everybody loving each other. And I think that's wonderful. But it's not, reconciliation is the wrong term here. Because again, Black people have been mistreated and bought and sold and redlined and lynched and systematically oppressed for centuries in this country. And now all of a sudden, because things are uncomfortable for people who have been comfortable for a long time, now they're like, we should kneel together. We should come together. Sorry, dog.
You're okay.
And what I don't like about, maybe I'm just being hypersensitive on this too, is kneeling is what got us here in the first place. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to see a cop kneel. It's too late. It's too late now, man. Just police your brothers, police your sisters, get the bad cops out. I've made this analogy too. If you have 10 bad cops, because I keep hearing, it's only a small handful of bad cops. Well, if you have 10 bad cops and 1,000 good cops, but those 1,000 good cops don't police those 10 bad cops, and you have 1,010 bad cops, I don't want to see you kneeling with us. I don't want to see you. I want to see you making the change in your own department that you can.
Call out the bad cops.
Exactly.
It's not that hard. There's more good cops than there are. I guarantee. I know that. I know it is. There's more of you. Once they realize that there's more good cops and bad cops, call them out. Get them out.
It's on the academies and the departments and the state lawmakers to include, diversity training and de-escalation training. Like it gets back into the systemic issues.
And stop
that's another thing.
Right.
They're trained to not kill people, but they keep killing people.
Yeah.
They're trained how to arrest somebody. They're trained how to shoot somebody if they have to. Yet you keep seeing them kill people, but I'm sorry, no, you don't. You keep seeing them kill black people, but you have a white protester with a gun, and somehow he's arrested and stopped at McDonald's on the way home. Like, it's crap. It's crap. This is proving over and over and over again that it's racism that's driving this. It's not proving that they're not trained. It's not proving that they don't have the diversity training. They have it. They're using it when they want to, and when they see a black man and he has a toy in his hand or some Skittles, they're going to shoot him.
And I think to the point RJ is making, it's just, I don't think anybody here, any of the five of us, is saying that all cops are bad cops. But every single good cop, I would think more than anybody else, would want to call out the bad cops. I can tell you from my perspective, I can only talk about my perspective. I was a TV reporter for 6 years. Journalists don't have the best reputation. And it's not because of lack of effort on my part. I like to think I was a good reporter. But there were bad gotcha reporters, and there are bad gotcha journalists. They exist. And I was so offended when I would see that, when I would see these reporters do these awful things, when I would see these reporters not check their sources, when I would see these reporters get things wrong and make things up and just try and get there first instead of getting it right. And I would call them out. Because it degrades the entire profession. And police officers serve such a vital role in our society. They are so important to making sure that we have a society. And the vast majority of cops, who I would imagine don't want to kill a black man, you have a responsibility, and I would imagine an innate desire to call out those cops. This buddy system doesn't work. Call out the ones who are ruining it for all of us and for all of you as law enforcement officers.
And along the lines of all this, man, I'd be real interested to honestly have some conversations with police officers and find out what are they feeling on the inside? Is there some sort of fear? Because I know when I walk somewhere in this town, it is like I get like a million eyes on me quickly, or I can sense that people just are clutching like possessions, or, I'm like, hello, how are you? And I'm a nice guy, and people just nothing, like no response, like no sort of equal, like visual, if you will. And I can tell, man, when people are just, when they're just worried, like, and I'm like, man, you really don't have to worry about me. Like, I am like the last person you need to worry about, and there's probably like a million people that walk in after me that I would think were probably more sketched out. You know what I'm saying? And it's just a trip, and so I'm just curious, like, why such brute force with black folks and not with anyone else? And what are they, do they not think that they can just de-escalate? Like, are they worried do they think that that sort of stereotypical athleticism, that carries through the sports is going to somehow like subdue them, or you know what I mean? I just don't know. I have my own speculations about it, but again, like, I would love to sit down with police officers who maybe have these sort of feelings, whether or not they just haven't been in the situations, but they can at least admit, like, okay, yeah, this is how I feel when I handle this particular race versus that race, or why maybe that race maybe seems a little inferior. Maybe, they're not worried about the skater kid. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd really love to know how they assess people, so that's something that I think is open-ended, and I'm sure we all know police officers, so I would love to have that conversation pop up sooner or later. Let's shift this, though. I want to ask you guys another question, and I mean, have any of you ever been subject to racism, or know someone who has?
Knock myself out right now. I am among the most privileged people you could ever be. I am a cisgendered white man in America. I have not been, to my knowledge, and I think I would know it, I have not been the receiver of racism, because it doesn't get much more privileged than me. I've seen it all over the place. I think people see it, But I don't think, as far as if we're having a conversation about being a recipient of racism, that I should even have a conversation.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I remember like a time, one of my first 2 years as a teacher, I think, I was on the Navajo reservation, and it was a time I realized how privileged I was. And I had a student who, his attendance was poor. He would come to school every 9-10 days. And one day I called him out and I said, Cordell, where you been, man? Like, I missed you. Like, where? And, the reservation's a big place, and housing is far apart, and bus stops are few and far between. And, he called me out and he's like, man, you're white. You don't get it. Like, grandma she was somewhere else and I didn't have a ride today. Like, and I really thought about that for the first time, that like, that's something I never had to think about. I got to school every day. I had a bus pick me up. That was a non-issue, and obviously that doesn't answer the question, but that was when I kind of first realized how privileged I was,
I am kind of, I've been inconvenienced by it, but I've never been oppressed, if that makes any sense. I have no idea what it is to be a black man in America right now. Yeah, I'm a Mexican. I'm a bald Mexican guy who may look menacing for some reason, but it's always been just a menace, or not a menacing, but a nothing. It's an inconvenience. It's never been anything what I've seen a black man go through.
Yeah, definitely what RJ's saying. I've never technically experienced what a black man has gone through, or a black woman, but what RJ said earlier, way at the beginning of this, he's been racially profiled. He's Mexican. I'm Mexican too. I've been racially profiled, and walking into a store, they'll follow me. They'll constantly ask me for help, and I'm like, no, I don't need help. I know what I'm here for, and I know you're racial profiling because employees from that store have admitted that their managers tell them in their little earpiece to watch somebody. And my brother, he's Mexican. He's a coach for the Rio Grande high school team for the girls. And I went out to one of the games when I was about 8 years old. and the ref called a dirty Mexican. And that really, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
That made everybody so upset. He had no reason to do that.
I'm sorry, Alicia.
Yeah, I'm sorry as well.
Yeah, and it that sucks and it hurts.
I'm really sorry.
No, don't
be sorry. No, we're here to share these experiences.
It makes me so mad that so many people go through this, and so much worse than what I just said.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks so much to hear that. And I think anyone of any Latin, background, whether you're Mexican or not, has been called a dirty Mexican, and it sucks and it hurts. And
my dad has been targeted too. When we would drive to Georgia, we had to really watch where we would drive through because he's of a darker complexion than I am, and it's just hard that
Yeah, I do.
Mostly everyone.
Yeah, and I was just gonna add on to that. Like, I mean, I'm from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and before I moved here, some 13 years ago, I was living in Birmingham, and as a kid, I spent summers there, right? I spent summers in Alabama, and I'm usually playing with the neighborhood kids who are all black, and the areas of Alabama are kind of broken up, like racially, so to say. There's North Alabama, which is predominantly white and is very conservative. Then there's like the southern part, which is black or more liberal. You know what I mean? And it's two different like kind of areas. It's completely different. And I drove up to Coleman, Alabama, and places. And no one really kind of forewarned me. And I was just there because I had made friends. I grew up in California, and I have a very diverse friendship base, right? So I have a lot of white friends, I have a lot of Hispanic friends, Assyrian friends, like friends of just all different races. And so I'm just going to like North Alabama, having a great old time doing things and not necessarily realizing, all the eyes that are on me or anything of that nature, and how people are treating me slightly different, and someone had made a joke to me. He's like, "Oh, you didn't see the sign that said, 'Don't let the sun come down on your black ass'?" And I was like, "What?" Like, you know what I mean? That tripped me out because, I'm just thinking like things are chill today, and then I'm finding out that that like folks are like all kind of talking about me in a restaurant, and then to only find out that part of Alabama is like where a lot of lynching has happened, and whatnot. And KKK is still very much a thriving force, like, in those areas. And so, I mean, I've experienced quite a bit of racial profiling. I mean, I get it here sometimes, like, when I'm walking in places, and I live in the Northeast Heights, and, I'll get it there. Like just, eyes just following me around, and and the temperature in the room changes, you know what I mean? And I am typically like the only black gentleman to a lot of things that I go to, or, when I go to heavy metal concerts or whatever it may be, like a lot of things that I subscribe to. Hockey, when I go watch hockey, I might be one of the few in the room, and, and I don't normally have to experience my color until someone makes it that way. Do you know what I mean? Until someone either says something that kind of is subtle or incidental, or we're going through this time right now, right? I was telling someone the other day that I was telling David, his fact is I'm driving up next to people, and I feel like my car, which is already at a small hatchback, is even smaller, like a micro machine, because I look outside the window and it's like someone's witnessing me being black. You know what I mean? Or, I'm being looked at, or what is he going to do? Or, where is he going? And, and someone could say, oh, well, that's just inside your head. I'm not thinking that. They're not thinking that. But it's like with what's going on in the world, like, let's be honest, white folk, you're definitely being looked at too. Like, like people of color are looking at white people. They're looking at police officers, and whether or not prejudice is happening, you're feeling it. You're feeling it because of the situations that we're talking about, and if from those moments that police officer or that white person can take that feeling and go, man, I every time I went into Mr. Powdrell's, or anytime I went into, the area in Albuquerque where it was a black community or a Hispanic community, man, it was like they were looking at me. It was like they were watching me. Like, if you could attribute that as that's what it feels like for them. That's what it feels like for them when they go into places that are predominantly white, or where there's a lot of police officers chilling. I go into Dunkin' Donuts. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not trying to throw this out there as like a stereotype for police officers, but I do see a lot of police officers at Dunkin' and at Taco Cabana here because they get the free hookups. When I walk in, I'm respectful. I'm like, hey officer, how you doing? This and that. And I'll tell you, like, they're very chill with me, But there are times when I walk in and it's like, you know, I'm just trying to be in and out because I don't get that same reception back. You know what I mean? And they might be in a moment, but that moment that they were in, you know, wasn't very warm and welcoming to me. You know what I mean? And being by myself late night, I'm trying to go home. You know what I mean? I'm trying to wake up the next day at my place, not in a cell. Just saying. You know, and that's the truth of it. You know, and it's hard to share. You know, and you know, but I mean, I got to put it out there. This is the time for us to put these things out there.
Yeah, and we need to hear that. We need to hear that because we're not assuming that you're going through anything. We're just like, hey, look, there's Chris. But we don't know, as people who know you, we don't know that you're going through all of that. We just like, hey, look, it's Chris. It's a soccer game. We're here. Chris, how have you been? How was your week? How's the podcast? How's this or that? But we don't understand what you're going through day in, day out. Not feeling safe, going to get a snack late at night, or even now, like right now, it's getting dark. The darker it gets, the more danger that you're in. And it shouldn't be that way. We don't feel that, and we can't ever feel that, especially here. Yeah, I'm a Mexican, but I'm in Albuquerque, so it's almost like a moot point. But if you go out and you're feeling like, well, I just want a damn donut, and I'm feeling like everybody's staring at me or everybody's clutching their purse because I just walked in and I just want a chocolate glazed donut, it's something that we need to hear and we need to know about.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I mean, like, you know, I wear black tees almost all the time, right? But I'm not trying to rock a black hoodie because, you know, poor brother got killed in a black hoodie. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, I mean, you know, anything like that, you know, it's. And
Chris, this isn't meant to be disrespectful at all, but you're the least menacing person I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm more afraid of Alicia than I am you right now. I'm not gonna lie. but I mean, that's the problem. Good. Is we get to know you and we know who you are, and we're not judging you just by the color of your skin. We're judging you by your bad soccer teams, and we're judging you by your bad taste in music, or liking hockey or something like that. But,
right,
but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and those are points that that's fine. You know, I mean, it's like we can have those differences of opinion. You know, we can all side with different teams. You know, like I can like Manchester United and like and get what I mean and get booed up in here, but it's like those things are negotiable. You know what I mean? But what's not negotiable is like racism. You know what I mean? And or bigotry or prejudice or anything like that. Like those things are not. And I mean because that leads to, if you want to keep those types of friends who subject you to that, then you have to go silent. You have to be complicit, or you have to unfollow them and, you know what I mean? And unfriend them. And, and those are big things to do, and then what comes from it.
Yeah, but just knowing that you're going through that as your friends and people who know you, it just you sharing that and us knowing that, it makes us more aware. It makes us know how you feel and how other Black people are feeling that we don't know, and maybe somehow we can change what we're doing. I don't know how. Make a conversation, do something, reach out. You don't have to just clutch your purse and cower. Just do something. They're afraid of a Pantone of skin. They're not afraid of the person. They're just afraid of what color skin you are and all this crap that they fear that is just garbage. And
because they don't know the person. They don't know you. That's the thing. And they don't, your everyday people you meet, when you go to Dunkin' Donuts aren't going to know you. Of course you can't know everybody. You're just going to get a donut. You don't need to hear the life story of the cashier, and he or she doesn't need to hear yours. But you said something that I think is really important, and that's like, I'm not going to wear a black hoodie because Trayvon Martin was wearing a black hoodie. Okay, Trayvon Martin was wearing a hoodie, and they killed him. But the thing is, Chris, like if you didn't do every single thing that a Black person has done when they've been killed, you wouldn't be able to do anything. You wouldn't be able to have Skittles. You wouldn't be able to reach for your wallet. You wouldn't be able to drive. You wouldn't be able to be out after dark. And the thing is, Black people have to take these precautions because of the society we live in. Mm-hmm. You can't wear a hoodie. You can't go out to get a burrito after dark because that's how black people get killed. That's how black people get arrested. That's how black people get followed. And like I said, it's just not everybody has the opportunity to know you, Chris. And I recommend anybody listening, if you haven't had the chance, get to know Chris. He's just a good fucking person, regardless of what skin tone he has. So, it's. I guess I'm trying to make 2 points here, and one of those is again like we as white people need to be aware of the precautions that black people have to take on a daily basis, which is I think if we had to deal with would feel absolutely overwhelming, and two is that you as Josh, you, me, as white people. We are not going to have, none of us have the opportunity again to get to know everybody. So we can't be afraid of people. We aren't going to have the opportunity. Not everybody's going to get the opportunity to get to know Chris and know that he's a great person. So you shouldn't take that moment to think, well, I don't know him and he's black, so I don't think that's going to work for me, or I'm going to judge him, or I'm going to follow him, or I'm going to keep my eyes on him because he's doing something wrong. I guess those are the 2 points I'm trying to make.
Okay. Well, and I wanted to shift in this. I know I think it came up earlier, but we were talking about like non-racist versus anti-racist. And I think that this distinction has to be made. And let's spend a little time talking about the different traits of it, because, too many people, are just basically, they're coming off like, well, I'm not racist because I have a black friend, or I'm not racist because like I, love NBA basketball and LeBron, or whatever sort of personalizations that they'll try to make. And, the thing with non-racist is you're just basically like internalizing. You're focused on yourself. You're trying to make sure that you don't say anything racist, but you're also in a sense kind of tolerating, things like it's the difference between active and passive, more or less. And so that's the thing that has to be made. I mean, like an anti-racist is speaking out. I mean, they're being verbal, they're addressing it, whereas the non-racist is tolerable. I don't want to shake the boat. This moment's going to probably pass. Like, we can just get past this moment, and I mean, have you guys kind of experienced that sort of like vibe in the room before?
Yeah, I know several people who are just, I'm not racist. I see everybody as equals. That garbage is, I am sick of that garbage, for one. I am tired of that. You can't just say, I'm not racist. I treat everyone. You have to actively be not racist. You have to be out there and be more than anti-racist. You need to put racists in their place. You need to speak out for everyone against racists. And that goes for everyone. That's not just on Chris for being black, me being Mexican, and you guys for being white. We all need to come together. We need to have one powerful voice, like one powerful wall of anti-racism.
I think non-racist would be fine if there weren't systemic oppression, non-racist and what you're describing, RJ, of, I see everybody as equals, and I don't see color. I've heard that before too, which is another thing entirely, which we can get to. But non-racist would be fine if everybody were treated as equals within the society. They are not. So your passiveness, your ability to say, I don't judge people. That's great. That's a positive thing. It is a positive thing to be non-racist. But when there is a system that fails people of color on a consistent basis, your passiveness is not enough. We need to be active to fight a broken system. And again, actually, not a broken system. I hate that term, actually, because it was designed to oppress people of color. It's not broken. It's operating perfectly. So, yeah, there's non-racist is not enough when there is a society and a situation and a setup that is in itself tilting the table. We need to tilt it back, and that is being anti-racist.
Yeah. I think, like, for me, it's like making sure to speak up when I hear people say things that are racist, that I'm calling them out, like you said. As a teacher, I have a responsibility to educate the next generation to make sure that they're aware of these things. You know, and I like what you said about, oh man, I'm losing my train of thought now. But I'll share something that I saw on social media, I think maybe yesterday. One of my favorite bands growing up was Switchfoot. And they have, you know, a largely Christian audience. And they're, I think, 4 white guys and a Filipino guy from San Diego. And the bassist, he put out a note, you know, on Twitter, and it said, "This is my confession number 1. You know, I've let things go. It's been convenient for me to ignore this when these things are happening because it didn't affect me. I'm going to try to do better," you know, and it was sincerely Tim. And that was his confession, you know, and if we all see that within ourselves and work towards getting better, that's something that we can do.
I agree. I think we're all guilty of that. I mean, Josh, I would imagine you and I more than anybody, and I hate to keep calling you out, Josh. I don't mean to do that.
I'm the other white guy here.
But I mean, it's so easy. It is so easy, guys. RJ, Alicia, Chris, I wish you could experience how easy it is to be a white guy. And it's so easy for us to ignore things. It is so easy for us to not react. It is so easy for us to not stand up. People you care about. Like I consider you for me to not stand up because it doesn't directly impact me as a white person. Isn't that sad? That's sad. That is a sad thing. So we as white people need to get uncomfortable, I think is the important thing. We need to get uncomfortable. We need to realize the status quo that has benefited us for so long is not good enough. And I think circling back to a point we briefly touched on at the beginning, of Black Lives Matter, the importance of saying Black Lives Matter. You know, the response that you'll hear from time to time, and I've certainly heard it, is all lives matter. And I think this goes back to the non-racist versus anti-racist thing. If the entire deck was not stacked, if the tables were not tilted, it would be okay, I think, to say all lives matter. But it has been systemic oppression for centuries. And so while we are all aware that every single person's existence is important, let's focus and let's talk about the portions of our society that have been degraded for centuries. Let's focus, you know, nobody is saying that because Black Lives Matter, you as a white guy, Josh, you don't matter as much. Sorry, that's just how it is. No, you know how we know white people matter? Because there's a fucking society built for them. And there has been for centuries. So if you as a white person are offended by the phrase Black Lives Matter, check yourself. Realize you have something around you that is built for you and has been forever. Things have worked for you in ways they will never work for Black people, in ways they will never work for Hispanics unless we fight for it. Yes, we recognize that people are important regardless of what their race is, and we should all be fighting for this equality and equity and love amongst all people. But let's fucking focus on the people who have been degraded for centuries.
Well, it's like if Chris cut his hand, and I said, "Hey, Chris, let me get you a Band-Aid for that," and David said, "Well, what about my hand?" Your hand's not bleeding. Your hand's not hurt. Right now, Chris's hand is hurt. I'm going to give him a Band-Aid. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, that's actually a very good analogy and good way to put it. You know, because I mean, like I said, like that verbal oppression that you experience when someone says all lives matter. Again, like these are considered microaggressions. You know, these are like subtle little things that you can say. You know, that ultimately, like, you might think that they're not hurting people or cutting them inside, but they truly are. I mean, you know, other things like, again, like I heard my mom said this earlier. We were talking, and she was telling me about how she had heard someone say this. She had said, like, someone says, I'm colorblind. I don't care if you're white, black, yellow, green, or purple, or some people say, oh, like, I don't see color. Like, we all bleed the same. And it's like, yeah, but it's great that you say that, but like, you're not really speaking out against like racism. Like you're basically just allowing it to happen, and you're just throwing some little chicken soup for the soul little remedy like over it. Like, that's not enough for me, man. You know what I mean? And or things like this one right here, I've heard this so much, like in the name of dating, where people haven't seen me before they heard me. This is the one that gets me, and it's always gotten me, and I don't know. You're so well spoken and articulate. You don't sound black. Like, please don't say that to me.
Yeah, don't say that at all.
Please just take that one out of the books, because
just shut up. Just shut up. Just stop talking.
Please tell me how I'm supposed to sound black. Like, I just don't know. I can't sit here and try to make the Fat Albert sound for you. I don't know what it is, and
I'm sorry, Chris. That's so shitty.
That one is shitty, because when it comes down to it, it's like this. Look, my parents raised me to be a well-spoken, articulate man. They also gave me they gave me something with that. They said, look, you're a black man, and you're going to have to work twice as hard as every white person to be successful in this world, because you don't got the same chance. I had to bust my ass like so much in school. I had to make sure that I was on all the right places. I had to deny myself at times hanging out with a whole lot of black kids so that I would not somehow be grouped into a stereotype of being a hoodlum, so that I could basically hang out with the country club kids and have a fair chance at life too. Like, that stuff still happens. I am still, even this day and age and in career, still knowing that I got to work twice as hard as most of my counterparts. Like, that I got to make sure that I'm a certain way, and that I say certain things and come off something like that stuff's still happening. So that you don't sound black thing is just so, I just can't, I just can't deal with that. It's like, I just can't, so that one right there is a huge microaggression. Like, you really want to see someone want to burn down your city, like, keep saying stuff like that. You know what I mean? Because like you're planting seeds, of hatred in people for that.
And one of the ones you mentioned, it's always bothered me is when you mention it's I don't care if you're black, white, brown, green, purple, whatever. You know why that bothers me? It's what that's essentially saying is, I don't care if you're white or a crazy other thing. That's what that's saying. It's if you're it's equating being black and brown with being purple or green. This is just like, that one is always that one gets me.
And if you're looking at those sayings now, like, we all bleed the same. No, we don't. Black people are bleeding a lot more than we are. We're not bleeding the same.
That is very true. Well, and there are other things that go along with being passive and aggressive, right? We've talked about it, like silence, right? Like the saying is now, your silence equals violence, or silence equals complicity, right? And how many people are just not saying anything? They're just like, well, I'm just gonna, I know I'm just gonna want to talk about the preservation of buildings, or I'm gonna want to talk about all lives matter. So because that's my position, like, I'm just gonna stay silent. And maybe for that person, it sounds kind of shitty to think about. Maybe that person, maybe if they don't have something good to say, they're not going to say something at all, but they're also tolerating the fact that racism is happening, and they're still part of the problem regardless.
We're all complicit if we don't stand up.
And that brings me to something like, specifically in our world of sports, right? I mean, like, we put a lot of money into things, right? We buy shoes, we buy clothes, we buy music from record labels, we buy sports memorabilia from sports teams. I mean, our money goes places, right? And we're supporting those organizations because of the entertainment we get from it. not to mention we're there with the team, like through some very interesting moments. We're supporting players that are going through tragic moments. We saw one of the greatest basketball players alive suddenly die in moments, like from a helicopter crash. Like, to be there, if you're a Lakers fan, whether you're not a Lakers fan, you're still a human fan, and you're still there to be there during that moment. And so what I'm getting to is when an organization doesn't come out and specifically support, in this instance, Black Lives Matter, and is not vocal and very much to the point, that's a problem. We've seen some organizations come out and kind of craft like something for like marketing and be like, oh, we're with you. We're standing with you. And I'm like, who the hell is you? You know what I mean? Like, I want to ask that, but I know that I'm going to get some smart ass answer like, whoa, of course it's the black people. And it's like, why didn't you say that? Like, what are you afraid of? Like, put your best foot forward with these statements.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think in addition to that, it's making it more than a statement, right? It's action to follow it. I really liked what the Tampa Bay Rowdies did in the USL. It was a statement. It was calling it what it was, which was murder of George Floyd. And then they followed up with, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. We're putting our money here. We're putting our action here. We're putting our effort here. A plan of action to combat. And I mean, for brands, I think that's the equivalent of what we talked about a few minutes ago, which is being non-racist versus being anti-racist. Any brand can come out and say, we support black people. Hooray. Put your money where your mouth is. Put your effort where your mouth is. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm, like just thinking about it, like locally, like, I mean, there was a point this week where I called out some clubs, I mean, it wasn't New Mexico United because they came out and said, their piece about it. They came out and showed solidarity with the black community, but I called some other clubs, and these are clubs that, that I'm supporting, whether it's I'm writing about them or, I'm spending money, in their organization. And to me, for those clubs not to come out and say something, to not come out with a statement even before I had to call them out, like, that's appalling to me, and those owners may not understand that, but it's like, look, you had a moment to come out and state, like, I may not fully understand all of it, but I know in my heart this is right to do, to put this on the line. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're more worried about the folks that are buying your season tickets, or you're worried about the major demographic, that you might have being maybe police officers or whatever it might be, whatever sort of thing is keeping you back, like, that's a problem. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, like, I don't know that I want to come and cover your team anymore. I don't know that I want to give your team visibility in the community, because what you're about is not about the right things.
And I think
you're not about the right things. Yeah,
we as consumers need to make that apparent with where we spend our dollars.
Yeah,
when we see organizations that either give that hollow statement or don't do anything at all, or actively fight against equality and equity, I think that's when we as individuals need to decide, all right, I'm not going to spend my money there.
Yeah. And I mean, and what's worse is those said clubs got players on the team that are black.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how does your player feel, or your coach feel, that you as an organization haven't come forward and said something so they can feel like they're covered by you? I mean, I can't imagine that they want to be there much longer, or that it's a hot topic at the dinner table. If anything, they're looking for another club that's going to embrace them, where maybe they love their black players a little bit more than you do. And I need that to be very sharp and very heard, like in New Mexico, because I mean, black folk are 2.9% of the population here. So I mean, if I'm at your spot consuming and endorsing what you're doing, you know, all this time just because that's the thing that I did, and I'm in a situation now and you don't got me, like, I mean, you can't expect me to keep coming back to your spot. I mean, you know, I mean, it's on you right now. It's the ball's in your court to do the right thing.
You're not coming out with something like that because of business reasons is rewarding racism. It's rewarding people who don't want to see race or bury their head in the sands or actively hate black people or brown people. Doing something like that, not coming out with a statement is just a slap in the face. And who are you really afraid of? Are you really afraid that the racists are going to make that big of a dent in your bottom line? Or do you just want to say like, oh, if I say nothing, I have everyone? It's hard to see that. And the statement Black Lives Matter is not anti-cop. It's anti-establishment, I guess. But we're not just saying it's only cops killing black people. We're also saying black people don't have access to the same educational opportunities, the same financial opportunities. It's harder for a black person to go get a loan at a bank than it is for a white person. So Black Lives Matter isn't anti-cop. Black Lives Matter is Black Lives Matter.
Exactly. Well put. And I'm so glad that we keep getting to stress this point in this conversation, because it needs to be heard, you know, and it needs to be very clear to folks, you know, what exactly it means and what it doesn't mean. So then the next thing then is like, let's talk about some things that we can do locally, right? Like we've traveled through this conversation. We've definitely unloaded, you know, a lot of real sensitive topics. You know, we've definitely shed some tears here and got to dig real deep. And I know that we're all like on the same page with it, you know, as far as what's happening. But let's talk about some things locally that we're doing, or some things that like that everyone else can partake in at this point. Maybe you've been riding the fence long enough. Maybe you've been kind of sitting watching the streams long enough, and you want to get out there. You know, locally, what's happened? There's been protests, right? There's been peaceful protests put on by organizers for Black Lives Matter. You know, we went, me, RJ, Dave, and some other gents. We went to a peace vigil, right? We went to a candlelight vigil for George Floyd, amongst all the other black folk that also passed away. And we went to that. It was like last Sunday, right?
I think that's right. Yeah,
last Sunday, and that was at the Albuquerque Peace and Justice Center. Mm-hmm. That's correct. And that, to me, like my experience being there, like that, what made that experience for me was, one, my friends were there with me, so I wasn't like going to something that was going to be this like self-medicating sort of thing where I was like by myself and I was like more in my head or worried about being alone and things being awkward to really allow myself to be at peace. But I was there with friends that genuinely had my best interest at mind and were my support system. You know, I loved the speakers they had there. Ebony Booth and Erica Crump were the two I remember. And let me just tell you, okay, like as a black man, like, okay, like, and just as a person in general, like I have never heard women speak like that. Just so powerful, like just coming from a strong position. Like it still moves me how they spoke from like a point of ancestry and really like embracing like their blackness. And it was just so epic to hear it, you know, like I wanted to hear more of it. You know, in fact, I reached out to them and, you know, tried to make the connection just because, you know, I need to hear from more people like that are bold, that could speak out, you know, because I mean, you know, that's going to help me to not be quiet at times, you know. What were your guys' like kind of like thoughts about that event?
There was lots of amazing moments, but one that stuck with me in particular, I believe it was Ebony Booth, who addressed white people directly and said, "White people, I got no use for your sadness. I have no use for your tears. I have no use for your sadness. And that kind of struck me because I'm sad. I'm angry about what's going on and what's gone on for so long, and I'm sad about it. But my sadness is not productive right now. My action is, and that's what that was. And from at least what I took from it is, it's a call to action. It's her saying, you sitting on the couch and being sad about the situation isn't good enough. And there are ways that you can help. You can either be there at protests, or you can contribute, to the NAACP, or you can support Black-owned businesses, or you can do all of these things, but your sadness isn't good enough. And that hit me hard, because in my heart, I was like, you know what? She's right. She's right. And I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of sitting on the couch and just being like, this sucks. This is horrible. Let me write about it on Facebook, and writing about it on Facebook can be cathartic, and it has been for me at times, but that is not good enough. And it was a call to action that I felt.
Yeah, I was mostly ashamed that was my first time going to something like that. I've shared Black Lives Matter stuff on social media and stuff like that, but I've never actually done something. So just hearing the voices of people who are oppressed and their stories, I don't remember who it was, but it was a mom, and she had her kid up there with her, and in tears she said, "I worry more that he's not going to come home someday." She didn't care about herself. She cared about her kid. I think because I have kids, I associated with that so much. But hearing her crying at the microphone, talking about how she just wants a better life for him, and for him not to be judged just because he's Black, but because of his character, that was the one thing that struck me the hardest. And then being able to march with everybody down Central after the vigil in a very peaceful manner, with so many people just loud and just trying to get their message heard, and being among them, that was one of the most powerful things I've ever done. And I'm ashamed it took me this long to stand up, to actually put my money where my mouth is and do something.
Hey, RJ.
Yep.
Do the next good thing.
That's what I try to do.
Do the next. I like that. Josh, Alicia, I know that you guys didn't get to go to that. Have you got to do anything in relation to Black Lives Matter or anything at this point, or are you guys looking to do stuff, or what are you thinking?
So when you and I had talked about sending a message out on the Seek and Strike Hockey page, I had retweeted the National Women's Hockey League. They had this list of organizations to donate to. So I actually threw some money down to the Minnesota Bail Fund. And I want to be better about supporting Black-owned businesses and doing the research behind, where my money's going to. And I want to just be better about educating myself as well, those moments in history that aren't in the Pearson history books. I want to know more about them, and I want to do better as far as that goes.
Yeah, what didn't I tell you? I told you that hockey was originated by the Blacks, the French Blacks that were trying to flee slavery. So they got to Canada, and they started the CHL, the Colored Hockey League, and they were the first ones to play the sport, and the first slap shop to be registered was by a Black man. And that hockey league didn't last very long, but obviously then eventually the NHL came around, and it wasn't until ESPN kind of surfaced it, I think a couple of years ago, and kind of brought out the fact that the original CHL was the Colored Hockey League. And and I thought that was so awesome. And I know there are more diamonds in the rough, if you will, out there like that, for my people. And it's always a joy to discover those kinds of things.
Those little nuggets that you didn't know about before. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's epic.
And we have Black players for the New Mexico Ice Wolves. And, hockey's not a Black sport per se, but there are athletes that are really good at hockey that are Black. And I think that the recognition of them being there is important, and knowing that their teammates and their fans have their backs is incredibly important.
Exactly. Alicia, we want to give you time to speak too.
I know. I really haven't been to like any protests or anything, but I've done, like kind of research and ask around, like I want to know more about this, and this, and what exactly is going on. And I have been debating about going to one of these, these peaceful protests, and it just, I've been seeing what's going on because I know some people, like the videos, like they're not doing anything. They're kneeling, they're doing their freedom of speech, and they're getting attacked by the police officers, and that's what scares me. And we have our right to do that. We're not initiating riots from all those videos that I've seen. People are getting taken out of the crowd because supposedly they're escalating the event when nothing is going on. And I really do think about going, and I wish I could have made it out last weekend, but unfortunately I couldn't. And if there's one coming up, I think I might go.
Nice.
I think you bring up a really good point, Alicia, and it's that not everybody has to be on the front lines, whether it be because you have a very legitimate fear that something could happen. And I think that's completely reasonable because we've seen so many instances of something happening and these being escalated by police when they don't need to be, whether it be because it's just not good for your mental health. There are other ways to participate. There are ways to show your support. What it can be supporting Black-owned businesses. It can be speaking out on social media. It can be calling out your racist friends and relatives. There are so many ways to participate and be a positive force. I think it's really important to point out, like, Alicia, don't feel obligated to be on the front lines if you're not comfortable. That's okay. There are other ways. And I'm not trying to tell you what to do at all. I don't want you to feel guilty for not being able to do that.
Yeah, you could read a book by a Black author or listen to a podcast by a Black podcaster. I mean, there's so many ways to help get the Black voice out there, and it doesn't have to always be about Black Lives Matter. I mean, if there's a Black podcaster that has a really great soccer podcast, for example, go listen to it, go download it, go subscribe. Give it 5 stars.
5 stars. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, man. Give us some subscription.
Game there, guys.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And in fact, so this Sunday, and I wanted to put this out there. I mean, Arthur Bell, who, is we love this guy. He's in our soccer community, and, he's an activist, and, he has been very instrumental in a lot of these protests, and I got to give it to him, man. Like, I really like to see him out there. I mean, we love his son. His son comes out, does the little reporter thing at United matches. And, just about that time when I was in the season, I remember thinking, I want to see more things for Black folks with this team. And then I see I see Arthur's son. And the moment I saw him was the moment where he's up there in the press booth or press box, and he's got the one Cody glove on and the goggles, and he's got the mic, and he's like, go, 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 go. And he's just going off. And I'm just like, yes, man. Like, I know they say don't cheer in the press box, but this guy gets a pass. Like, it's good. Like, I'm all for it. Like, I'm trying to have him as a reporter for me, and he just gets it going. And it's things like that, you know what I mean? Which are awesome. And so anyways, Arthur Bell, he invited me to an event this Sunday. It's at the Civic Plaza. It's called Strong Black Fathers. And, it's a time for really for the youth to kind of speak out, of different ages to speak out about, maybe their experiences, maybe some of the things they're doing, in this movement. And it's a chance for them to kind of take the stand, and that's huge, I think, for us to support our youth, because right now a lot of it's the adults out, and there's a lot of youth out there marching, but a chance for them to also speak, and it's kind of driven and kind of catered to the youth. I think that's huge, and so I'm gonna go. It's Sunday. I think it's at 4 p.m. I'll share the details to the Seek and Strike Collective Facebook page and also on the Twitter as well. And it'd be great to see people come out to that and be there, and show that solidarity. I mean, that's the next best thing that you can do is show up and stand with us, and then to what David said, Black-owned businesses. I had made a post earlier this week, and I want to circulate my money in the Black businesses. I heard that at the Peace Vigil that that for it to really do something in the Black community, that money needs to cycle 5 times through. So you go eat at Mr. Powdrell's, get that barbecue plate. You know what I mean? And then he takes his money and he's going to go. He's like, maybe he's got to pay an allowance, to like one of his daughters, and she wants to get her hair done. She goes and gets her hair done, at this other like supply spot, beauty supply, in the Black community. And then that money just keeps moving around, and that's helping strengthen the economy. And that's what, that's positive. That's where you can really put your money and really see things happening in the Black community. So that's something I'm personally going to be doing, and it's definitely, something I would encourage everyone else to do if you're looking for, another way to kind of move your money around here in New Mexico. I've put a list of all the businesses that are Black owned in the description of the show on YouTube, both on Facebook. And then we'll just be kind of sharing more resources as we go. And of course you can obviously donate to the greater donations, and I'll put those links out there for all the things going on in Minnesota. But these are things that you can do locally, that are going to be huge contributors to the Black community. And that really, according to what RJ is saying, is putting your money where your mouth is,
And if anybody is interested, also, we, The Curse, have created a new T-shirt that is it's opposing fascism. And all of the funds raised, we aren't making any money on it. All the funds raised will go to Fight for Our Lives here in Albuquerque as well, which is an organization led by youth that fights for social change and racial change and positive outcomes. So if you're interested in that, we've got that posted as well.
Yeah, I bought that shirt. That shirt was sick. It's got the 3 chilies pointing in a 45-degree angle. I got to say, that's killer. So
thank you.
If you haven't gotten one, pick one up. I mean, that's great. And I took the whole bundle actually. So
it's all the good causes. We've got our Pride mask, which supports Casa Cume. We've got our Crest mask, which supports, I believe it was
the NB3 Foundation
and the No to Be Gay Foundation. So
right,
just all great causes.
Right. So from here, I mean, we also we heard an announcement today, and Josh, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, so the announcement today is that we maybe are going to get soccer back here soon. So I might have that up here, actually. I will read the release that the USL Championship put out. The USL Championship is pleased to announce its Board of Governors voted on Thursday in favor of returning to play for the 2020 season with a provisional start date set for July 11th. And then it goes on to say we're going to get additional information and, going in regards with the state and local health authorities. So I think I did see something about the players still need to vote on it. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah, the Players Association still needs to come forth with their side of it. David, have you heard anything about it?
Yeah, so it's preliminary, so I'm excited, but I'm trying not to get too excited, but it's a step in the right direction. It's a big step in the right direction. I think the one important caveat here is that this does not solve the collective bargaining situation with the USLPA, and that needs to happen. It's something that we've pushed really hard for, and I think all of us as fans want to see happen. We want to see our players taken care of. We care about them, and again, we've kind of beat this dead horse several times. We'll continue beating it until it's a pulp. It's that some of these players make minimum wage or below. Not necessarily here in New Mexico, but because we are fortunate to have, good ownership who takes care of their players. But, there are players around the league who make below minimum wage. There are players around the league who don't have health insurance like the players at New Mexico United do. So we really want to push for an agreement, a reasonable agreement between the USLPA and the USL. The players have offered to take a 10% pay cut for players not already making below minimum wage, which I think is more than reasonable. And I really hope that the league does not use this as a bargaining chip or a way to leverage and pressure the players into, well, see, we've got this figured out. We're ready to go play. You guys better just accept the deal that we've offered you. I hope that does not happen.
Yeah. So, go ahead, RJ. Sorry.
I was going to say, it kind of feels like this might be that. It might be the league and the owner, not the owners, but the league board of directors or whatever they call themselves, using this as a, look, we have a start date, so now it's on the ball's in your court, or I guess on your side of the field. What are you going to do? Are you going to let the fans down? Are you going to let the fans down? So I hope that's not what's going on, but it feels like it could be that.
Yeah, and then also you got to remember the players really had that 14-day cycle, right, of response, and so at this point, with the league identifying a potential date, the players now have to be cognizant to not take 14 days all the time, because now, they need to kind of get a response back. I mean, still probably, let them scramble a little bit, make them wait, get them, kind of anticipated, but I think that 14-day thing is going to come into play a little bit. And honestly, if I could be honest, like when the announcement came out, like, as we're in the midst of this greater issue, it was cool. But like, I don't know. I don't want to lose sight of the greater issue. You know what I mean? Like, I'm glad that soccer could be back, and I hope that we will see soccer contribute into the movement more, and that we will see more efforts. I know that, we're working on something, you know what I mean? So, but that we'll see things happen, it'll be a great platform and vehicle. I just don't want it to be like, okay, like that was cool. Like we're through that. Now we got soccer, and then people get isolated and kind of forget about the greater thing. And you know what I mean? Because, I mean, on that soccer field, you still got 4 black men, you know what I mean, that, while they're playing soccer, I mean, you got to believe like they're going to use that platform to spread awareness. So, don't think it's the last you've seen of it.
And to make that point, drive that point home, Chris, with these T-shirts we talked about, with these T-shirts that we're selling to benefit Fight for Our Lives, we received very little, but a little bit of pushback on it, and people saying, it's associated with, political stuff, and we don't want to be involved in political stuff. We see anti-fascism as a human issue. It's a human issue. It's about people not wanting people to be in chains, not wanting people to be suppressed and oppressed. And I think, fascist regimes around the world treat people of color as less than. And so, it's a way for our players to know that regardless of their race, their ethnicity, whatever it is, that we stand with them. And I think that's really important for our players to know.
And hey, I mean, I hope that we get soccer back. I'm excited for it. I mean, I'm excited for what things we could see happen, and we're all excited. We've missed it. You know what I mean? Like, we certainly aren't going to take it for granted, because we haven't had it in a while. And, unless you're waking up at 4 or 5:30 to watch the Bundesliga, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, this is a good thing, So, man, I have enjoyed this conversation with y'all tonight. I swear this was like the vision I had before last season, that the Curse Cast just needed to be three people bigger, and we just needed to have just a giant forum, like Voltron. And so I definitely do appreciate getting to have both RJ and David on the podcast with us.
Thank you for having us. We need to do this more often.
Yeah, we appreciate you inviting us. It's really great.
Right on. So where can folks find you on Twitter, David?
Right here, right next to my name, David @David_M_Carl. But I just recommend following the curse. My tweets are not that good.
And RJ, where can folks find you on Twitter?
It's at RJ Montano33. I'm not very good at Twitter either, but I tweet a lot. And I've
Follow
been
his wife.
my wife is way better. I should have put her Twitter handle there.
Susie's
She's so
way
much
better at
smarter, more entertaining. I should have. Yeah, you're right. I failed on that one.
Josh, where can people find you on Twitter?
I'm at J_Kasky, which is a shortened version of my last name. And then I'm also running the Seek and Strike Hockey account. So Seek and Strike Hockey Legion for our hockey fans out there as well.
And Alicia, where can folks find you on Twitter?
You guys can find me under exclusive_Alicia. I really don't tweet. I just like stuff and retweet stuff. But I'm more active on Facebook, which is Alicia Arias, than Twitter.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, her point about just liking things would be like, if I could somehow just have access to TikTok and not really have an account, I would love that.
So that's funny you mentioned that. So Chanel, my girlfriend, she spends all of her time on TikTok. She's on it all. No, not all the time. That's not fair. She spends a lot of time on TikTok. She's just always watching videos and stuff like that. But she's never once posted. You can do that. Yeah,
there it is.
It's the bane of my existence because I'm just constantly hearing whatever the hot thing is. Check right next to me. I don't get it. I'm old. Whatever.
Right on, and you can find me at by Chris Walker on Twitter, and we want to give a shout out to everyone who was with us through the night in the chat room. The comments were so moving, and I want to give a shout out to Matthew Graham. Thank you so much for sharing your heart, and for throwing out some of the things that are maybe harder to post, or and we really appreciate you for contributing to this conversation. Let's definitely get some lunch here soon and build a friendship with that. So from that point, I guess we're all gonna get out of here and call it a night. Thanks for joining us for another episode of We Are Seek and Strike podcast, and also Curse Cast for the night. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Somos unidos.
We are united.